Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Govijana Vallabha Girivardhari Govijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nittai Gaur Haribo, 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 Nittai Gaur Haribo. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Sthira Sata Sri Srimad Chidandi Goswami Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Sthira Sata Sri Srimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrindi Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Govinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Jamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai, Bhakti Dev Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrind Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Seat is too high. Distance is too much. But we're social distancing, right? Anyhow, I apologize for sitting up here on this big platform, but that's the arrangement, so what can I do? Hare Krishna. So today is the auspicious disappearance day of Sri Ishvara Puri. And today is also the third day of our Sravana Utsav, which is the first section of our celebration of Gaur Purnima. So there's so much that we can do on this day. So much opportunity. But I thought that we could try to do two things. We should first glorify Sri Ishvara Puri. And then we thought to move forward in the transcendental Chaitanya tree to Srila Sanatana Goswami. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, we find Krishnadas Kaviraj describing the Chaitanya tree. And he describes that the seed of that tree is Madhavendra Puri. And then he goes on to describe that from that seed that is embodied in Srila Madhavendra Puri Pa, a sapling has come up, very just sprouted out of the ground, out of the fertile ground that has been created by the presence of Madhavendra Puri. And that sapling is Ishvara Puri. And it is from that sapling of Ishvara Puri that the great trunk of the tree, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, becomes awakened, matured. So, just briefly, we don't know, or at least I don't know, much about the early life of Ishvara Puri, how he met Madhavendra Puri, etc. But we do know that he was so close to Madhavendra Puri, very intimate, serving him very very completely and with full heart. Towards the end of Madhavendra Puri's life, he became quite invalid. As any of you have had experience, perhaps, I hope, not in your own life, but perhaps caring for your parents. Towards the end of life, the body begins to have difficulty. Fortunately, I'm still young, just only about 70 years old, so very little problems. So, but signs are there. Signs are there, little aches and pains. But we don't know, I don't know at least, how old Madhavendra Puri was, but he did become more dependent. And Ishvara Puri served him in every respect, to the extent of cleaning his toilet, cleaning him in every way. Sometimes when the body gets old, then the control of the bladder and bowels also goes, and so many things. But Ishvara Puri was happily engaged in serving every need of Madhavendra Puri. And Madhavendra Puri was immersed in the mood of a humble devotee, crying to hear about Krishna. I don't know about Krishna, I don't know anything here, I must hear about Krishna. He was expressing himself in this mood, and Ishvara Puri was happily reciting Krishna's pastimes for his pleasure. One other disciple of Madhavendra Puri became critical, saying, Gurudev, he knows everything. Why he is crying out like this? But Ishvara Puri understood the mood, and he served very, very faithfully. After the departure of Madhavendra Puri, Ishvara Puri began his travels, and we don't know that much, but we do know that he arrived in Navadvip at the time that Mahaprabhu, before Mahaprabhu's awakening of his Krishna Prema Pradayate mission. He stayed because he was godbrother with Advaita Acharya, although he didn't appear like that. When he arrived at Advaita Acharya's house, Advaita Acharya was engaged in puja, and Ishvara Puri simply sat by the side, didn't announce himself, didn't do anything. He was the embodiment of humility. He met by chance, although he could detect. He was attracted to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who he met by chance at the Ganges. And there was some exchanges. But this was not yet the time for Mahaprabhu's awakening. But the time that and this is described primarily in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Then we find some years later, around the age of 22, after the passing of his father, Jagannath Mishra, Mahaprabhu undertakes a pilgrimage to Gaya. And there, in Gaya, he again meets Ishvara Puri. And there's a wonderful exchange, which I don't have ready to relate, but the gist of it is how Mahaprabhu expresses that his mission, his objectives, the fruit of his pilgrimage is completely satisfied simply by meeting Ishvara Puri. And Ishvara Puri again expresses his appreciation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu requests Ishvara Puri to initiate him. To initiate him. Something is awakening. Ishvara Puri responds, what to speak of giving you mantra? I give you my life. And Ishvara Puri gives him, according to Chaitanya Charitamrita, the 10-syllable Gopal mantra. It mentions 10-syllable mantra. It's our understanding this is the 10-syllable version of the Gopal mantra that we receive in our line. And this touch awakens ecstatic love in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who proceeds from their home and at Kanai Natshala, immersed in kirtan, immersed in the chanting of the holy names of Krishna, he has Sakshat Darshan of Gopi Jana Vallabha. But that darshan disappears. And for the rest of his life, where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? Mahaprabhu's transcendental mad ecstasy of love for Krishna simply grows and grows. And the sapling of Ishvara Puri has now become the trunk of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This trunk, according to Chaitanya Charitamrita, has two main branches, Rupa and Sanatana. So now we'll proceed to one of those. Well, first we'll go to both of them, because the story begins with the two of them. Now, I noticed that there's no clock here for me to, so don't mind if from time to time I check the time. Excuse me. So our story now fast forwards. Mahaprabhu has inaugurated the Sankirtan movement. He has relished Kirtan in the house of Srivas. He has awakened the Sankirtan movement throughout the town of Navadvip. And the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare is now spread throughout the households. But he has become concerned how to save the critics. And he accepts the sannyas ashram. He travels. He goes first to Jagannath Puri and then he begins his traveling. He tours all over South India. But he desires to go to Vrindavan. He wants to go to Vrindavan. It's said that upon initiation by Ishvara Puri, he wanted immediately to go to Vrindavan. But he understood that he must first inaugurate the kirtan, Sankirtan. But the desire to go to Vrindavan has been burning with him, his aspiration. But the devotees can't bear the idea of him leaving and going from Puri. And by various methods, he is tricked. He arrives in Shantipur. He's attempting to go to Vrindavan and he's proceeding, but there are hundreds or thousands of devotees with him. And they arrive in the town known as Ramkeli. With, again, a huge retinue of devotees gathered. The Nawab, I think it is Nawab Hussain Shah, I believe is the name of the governor at the time, witnesses this extraordinary display and considers that this personality, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, must be a prophet, must be an extraordinary personality. He even comes so far as to consider him to be I haven't read deeply enough to because it's in Chaitanya Bhagavat and I don't have the Chaitanya Bhagavat. I don't have the Bengali Chaitanya Bhagavat. I have the English translation, but to really get into it, I felt I needed to have the Bengali words to understand just what was in the mind of the Nawab. You know, how did he see Mahaprabhu? He's a Muslim. He's a devout Muslim. So how does he see Mahaprabhu? How does he fit him in to his theology? Because he's overwhelmed. He's taken by him. It's at this time that the two brothers who have been serving the government of the Nawab and have assumed the names Dabir Kash and Sakhar Malik, although born as in Brahmin community, for the sake of their service, for the sake of their jobs, so to speak, they adopted the outward appearances, their dress, their names. They come to meet Mahaprabhu, who immediately recognizes their true character and initiates them, changes their name. You will now be known as Rupa and Sanatan. In the purport to that verse that describes this, Prabhupada makes a point about how one should accept a new name upon initiation, and criticizes some other Sahajya groups that do not do this. So Rupa and Sanatan, they approach Mahaprabhu with extraordinary humility. The prayers that they express prior to engaging in any conversation go on for there's about 10, 12, maybe more verses, how low they're expressing themselves, just such humility. And I can understand that we hear this term, with straw in your teeth. which is used to describe Rupa and Sanatan's approach. And I was reading this and thinking, yes, they really did put some straw in their mouths to symbolize what does that mean? When you put straw, it means that you consider that you're chinadapi sunichena, you are lower than the straw. Mahaprabhu accepted them. They gave a little advice, however. They were concerned. They said, Mahaprabhu, or Sri Chaitanya, don't stay. You should leave. Although the Nawab appears to be very pleased with you, still you cannot predict what he could do with such crowd, with such peoples, with so many people around you. And in fact, if it is your intention to go to Sri Vrindavan, this is not the way to go, surrounded by thousands of people. Later, after they departed, Mahaprabhu reflected on their words and felt, yes, they're right. This is not the way to go to Vrindavan. And he returned to Puri. From that moment, Rupa and Sanatan were trying to get out, to come out from this government service situation that they had found themselves, or they had become enmeshed in. Rupa was able to retire, and he proceeded. There's a whole story about how he distributed his, because both of these brothers had accumulated an extraordinary amount of wealth as the servants of the government. Rupa distributed his wealth amongst the Brahmins and family members. He kept some money, but at some point there was a incident where that money itself became a source of problems. And he arrives in Prayag, and there he gets to meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But Sanatan is, he can't retire. I mean, he would, it's not described, at least I haven't found any explanation of why was it that Rupa was able to retire but Sanatan couldn't. I suppose it would just be too much for the Nawab to let both of his trusted servants go. So Sanatan is trying to figure out, how am I going to, so he thinks, well, if I can make the Nawab displeased with me somehow, then he'll let me go. So he, on the excuse of illness, he stays at home simply hearing Bhagavatam. But instead of letting him go, once the Nawab finds out what he's doing, he puts him in jail. He imprisons him, punishes him in this way. So now he's stuck. But with sweet words, praising the religious qualities of his prison guard, and with an extraordinary bribe. It's described that he offered he said, here, take 5,000 gold coins. $5,000 gold coins. That's the way it is described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. I was thinking, 5,000 gold coins. How much does a gold coin weigh? And how much would that be? And it started to boggle my mind. So it was like 50 kilos of gold or something like that. It was like just really a fortune. And yet the guard said, well, he hesitated. And so Sanatan said, here's another 2,000, everything. That basically, as far as we can see, that left him with 8 gold coins. But the guard said, yeah, I want to do this, but it's my life too. What happens when the Nawab finds out? And Sanatan says, don't worry, the Nawab is on tour. When he returns, just tell him that I went to the Ganges for relieving myself or for taking bath, and I jumped in the Ganges with my shackles on and drowned. And you searched for me, and you searched for me, and you couldn't find me, and that's it. So the guard agreed. And Sanatan is free. He leaves immediately. At some point he collects or is met by his servant Ishan, who goes with him. And they take the back roads because they can't go on any of the government roads for fear of being caught. At one place on the way, they stop for the night, and the innkeeper, or the manager, whatever, the owner of the place, the lord of that place, has been able to detect. It's said that there's some astrologer in his keeping could tell by signs that there was some wealth with this personality. In fact, it is, and so, but Sanatan also recognizes what's going on, that this person is behaving too nice to me. Too nice. Something's going on here. And he tells Ishan, what money do you have? How much are you carrying? And Ishan delivers 7 of the gold coins in his possession. And the person describes, well, I knew that you had 8 gold coins. I was going to rob you, so you keep your money. But then Sanatan says, no, if I keep it, someone else will rob me. Better you take it. But then he turns to Ishan later and says, so you have some money? You have anything left? Yeah, I have this 1 gold coin. So okay, take that and you go. And he proceeds. Now he's completely free. Just imagine. He was a minister, the top level. Every material comfort was at his command. Wealthy. And he has now left it all and feeling so happy to be free. It's described that he was wandering with a torn quilt. Now, this is an interesting element, because when he leaves and he's progressing, he has just the simplest of clothes, a torn quilt, but he arrives at some place, and I don't remember the details, where one gentleman gives him something a little nicer, a nice blanket to wear, and he carries that. And finally he arrives in Varanasi, Kashi, to meet Mahaprabhu. And he proceeds to the house of Tapan Mishra, I believe. And Mahaprabhu senses his presence and asks, somebody is out there? And they go to the door and say, yes, there is some Muslim mendicant. So we can understand that Sanatan is appearing. As we know, he had assumed the name in his service. He was called Sakir Malik. He must have worn the kind of clothing. He must have had the kind of beard, probably. And just in general was appearing like a Muslim, but poor. But Mahaprabhu understood. Bring him in. Here is Sanatan. He sent him with Tapan Mishra, I think, or Chandrasekhar, to get cleaned up. He's shaven. He's given offered some very nice cloth. But Sanatan refuses. He said, no, I won't accept that. Give me one of your old clothing. He is given an old dhoti. He takes that cloth, he rips it in half or a few pieces. He wears one as kopin and the other wraps it around and feels free. Feels so free. When he meets now Mahaprabhu is very pleased to see his renunciation, his detachment. But by some glances, Sanatan realizes that the nice chadar that he's wearing is out of place. He leaves. He goes to the place of the washerman and finds somebody and offers, "Give me that old chadar, that old quilt that you have there, and take this." The washerman says, "What do you mean? How can I exchange this for that?" Then, no, you must do it. This is no trick. And when Sanatan returns, now without any material opulence whatsoever, Mahaprabhu is fully pleased. And now we have Sanatan Goswami with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to receive instruction. Excuse me, I am getting old. And so I'm going to move my legs here. Hare Krishna. Body is getting old. This is the thing. It's just the body. But so far it's all I know. A very scholarly devotee, his name is Sutaba Prabhu. He's from the UK. He's produced a small booklet called it's known as CC Compact, or Chaitanya Charitamrita Compact. And he has analyzed the contents of the Chaitanya Charitamrita and summarized the whole book in a way that you can really get to appreciate it, and of course then want to read it. In this summary, he gives sort of a timeline of Mahaprabhu, and with a special, because we have Adi Lila, Madhya Lila, Antya Lila. So we have 3 divisions of Mahaprabhu's life, and then he ascribes, in each of these divisions, he describes 4 periods. And I haven't yet memorized it all, but I know it begins with invocation. In the Antya Lila, we have invocation. The first part of the Antya Lila is Krishnadas Kaviraj invoking the mercy of the Lord and the Vaishnavas by various prayers. We have the incarnation. We have the incarnation where the Lord actually appears. We have the education, the Lord's Pandit Leela, and then it ends with the transformation, which we were discussing, the meeting with Ishvara Puri. From there we enter into Madhya Leela, and we first enter into renunciation. As you notice, everything is ending with shun. Easier to remember. So we enter into renunciation. Renunciation being Mahaprabhu's acceptance of sannyas. But then we move from there into propagation. His touring of South India, his propagation of the mission of Sankirtan. But then again awakens his aspiration for Vrindavan, his aspiration to go on pilgrimage to Sri Vrindavan, which results in what we're about to speak of, which our friend Sutapa has coined as organization. Organization. I'll get back to that. I'll just finish because it's in my mind now what the others are. So then from there, from here we go into Antya Lila. And in Antya Lila, we find it begins with appreciation. We find Mahaprabhu appreciating the devotees, their various qualities. So many forms of appreciation are there. Ramananda Roy, Sanatan himself, Haridas Thakur. But also we find correction. Correction, where different incidences happen. Chota Haridas incident. Ramchandra, Ramchandra Puri? The various personalities who are corrected. They're corrected. And then it moves into the final. Intoxication. Intoxication. And what is the last? And now I'm forgetting the last part of it. But we'll move back. Organization. Why does Sutapa describe these chapters of Madhya Lila starting with the teachings to Rupa Goswami and then progressing to Sanatana Goswami? So we have basically 4 or 5 chapters. I'll look it up. But it begins with the teachings to Rupa and then continues to Sanatan. And what are we finding here? We're finding that Mahaprabhu, he's putting down the seeds. He's laying the framework to organize the knowledge, the teachings that form the entire basis for the Gaudiya Sampradaya. This book, Chaitanya Charitamrita, in which these teachings are enumerated, is considered to be the final word on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's personality, who he is, and what he has come to do, and what he is teaching us. And these teachings are established in full, foremost, through the vehicles of Rupa and Sanatana, who then go on to take this and develop it into the Gaudiya literature. So, with Sri Rupa in Prayag, now I'm going to refer to this CC compact. Mahaprabhu spent 10 days with Rupa Goswami, covering, these are the topics as analyzed by Sutta Prabhu: the rarity of devotional service, the seed of devotion, the Bhakti Lata Bij. This is famous verse, Brahmanda, Brahmeti Kona Bhagyavan Jeev, Guru Krishna Prasade Pai, Bhakti Lata Bij. This is described to Rupa Goswami. Pure devotional service, the characteristics of pure devotion, and then finally, relationship with Krishna in the different primary rasas. But instead of going further, Mahaprabhu tells Rupa to continue to Vrindavan. And he goes, this is all taking place, by the way, on Mahaprabhu's return from Vrindavan to Puri. So first he goes through Prayag, and now he's in Kashi. So as we mentioned already, Sanatana Goswami has arrived. We've heard about his full renunciation. We've heard how Mahaprabhu has expressed his great pleasure in Sanatana's spiritual transformation. And now the teaching is about to begin. So it begins with Sanatana. In this very famous beginning, Sanatana now is speaking from the position that we might speak. And in this is chapter 20 of the Madhya Lila, text 102. Ke Ami. Kene amaya jhare thapatrai. Iha nahi jani. Kemoni hita hoy. Ke Ami. Who am I? Ke Ami. Kene. Why? amaya jare tapatrai. Why am I suffering? Why am I suffering? Iha nahi jane. If I don't know the answer to these questions, kemone hita hoy. What benefit is there in my life? Ke ami, who am I and why am I suffering in this world? This is the necessary beginning of our questions. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. We must begin at this point our inquiry. Who am I? Why am I suffering? He then continues, Sadhya, sadhana, tattva, puchite na jani, kripa kori sabatattva kahata apani. Sadhya, the goal. Sadhana, the process of obtaining the goal. Tattva, truth. He says, actually, I do not know how to inquire about the goal of life and the process for obtaining it. Please, being merciful upon me, please explain all these truths. And Mahaprabhu replies, Prabhu kahe, Krishna kripa, tomate purna hoy, sabatattva jhan. Tomar nahi tapatrai. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Lord Krishna has bestowed his full mercy upon you, so that all these things are known to you. For you, the threefold miseries certainly do not exist. Krishna Shakti Dharatumi, Jana Tattva Bhav, Jani Dhandya Lagi Puche, Sadhura Swabhav. Since you possess Lord Krishna's potency, you certainly know these things. However, it is the nature of a sadhu to inquire. Although he knows these things, the sadhu inquires for the sake of strictness. He concludes, Yogya Patra Hachitumi Bhakti Pravarthaile Krame Saba Tattva Shuna Koye Tomate. You are fit to propagate the cult of devotional service. Therefore, gradually hear all the truths about it from me. I shall tell you about them. So here we have Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepting first Rupa and now Sanatana as his messengers, as his servants to deliver all of his teaching. We know that Mahaprabhu himself wrote only 8, he composed 8 verses, his Shikshashtakam, which we find only at the very end of Chaitanya Charitamrita. But we can understand here that Mahaprabhu is teaching, he's giving his teaching through Rupa and Sanatana especially. Raghunath Das Goswami also appears later in the Antya-lila to receive more. And he joins Rupa and Sanatana. Later, Jiva arrives on the scene. Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta, Raghunath Bhatta, I believe, will come very soon in the Antya-lila. And Gopal Bhatta is come from his tour of South India. So these 6, they've received the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and now they're going to elaborate on them, organize them, compile them, create the foundation and the structure for the entire Gaudiya Sampradaya to go forward. And we come to the first instruction. We had Sanatan's question. Ke ami? Ke ami? And the first response from Mahaprabhu is to answer this question for him and for all of us. Jiver Swarup hoy Nitya Krishna Das. If Mahaprabhu simply stopped there, we would have everything we really need to know. Jiver Swarup, Jivera Swarup hoy Nitya Krishna Das. Suryamsa kiran yaiche agni jvala chai swabhavika Krishna teen prakara shakti hoy. So he begins by answering this question, who am I? He begins by telling us, telling Sanatan, and through him telling all of us, we are by nature Swarup. It is our very nature to serve Krishna eternally, without end. That's who we are. We are not the masters of anything. We're only servants. And we have just one choice. We can serve Krishna directly, or we can serve him indirectly through his material energy. But serving we must. We must serve. That is who we are. In the same way that water is wet, fire is hot, Jivera Swarup hoy Nitya Krishna Das. This is the foundation, the beginning, the fundamental principle. And from here, Mahaprabhu just simply expands. How do we understand this? After hearing this fact, who we are, now the question comes, well, who am I? Okay, but now comes the next question. Where am I? What's going on? What is all this that I'm experiencing? Who is Krishna anyways? If I'm the eternal servant of Krishna, then who is Krishna? How do I serve him?
What's the nature of that service? What is this world that I'm living in? What's the nature of Krishna? What's my connection? So many questions arise. And in this way, from here, Mahaprabhu answers them in a very systematic way. Very systematically, he progresses. In the very next verse, he begins to describe the energies. And he also describes the oneness and difference. The next verse, or one after, Krishnera Svabhavika Teen Shakti Parinati Chik Shakti, Jiva Shakti, Ara Maya Shakti. Lord Krishna naturally has three energetic transformations, and these are known as the spiritual potency, the living entity potency, and the illusory potency. Vishnu Shakti Para Prokta Chetragya Tattapara Avidya Karma Sangyanya Tritiya Shakti Ishyate. Originally, Krishna's energy is spiritual, and the energy known as the living entity is also spiritual. However, there is another energy called illusion, which consists of fruitive activity. That is the Lord's third potency. And this is from Adi Lila. So, we now see Mahaprabhu systematically explaining, taking from that basic position, Krishna, Jiver Swarup Hoya, Nitya Krishna Das, to get into a complete elaboration of the energies of the Lord, the manifestations of the Lord. From here on, the knowledge being transmitted is extraordinarily wide and deep. It's moved from Sanatana Goswami sitting, Lord, please instruct me. Now he must be, I mean, you can imagine being in his position with ears completely wrapped as Mahaprabhu in brief statements is outlining everything, revealing all the truths of Krishna consciousness. Again, our friend Sutapa has summarized these. He begins, like we say here, from 108 to 151. So there's about 40-some verses where the Lord describes the energies. We've just begun to hear about the energies, the Chit Shakti, Maya Shakti, Jiva Shakti. We'll continue to hear about those energies, the material, spiritual, marginal, how the living beings, how the living entity can disengage himself from material energy. He cites the story of Sarvagya the astrologer. So this is a story that Mahaprabhu uses. We'll see, we see here that Mahaprabhu teaches very expertly. If you are in a position of teaching sometime, you'll experience that it's very effective to use stories to communicate. the subject matter that Mahaprabhu is giving is very, very deep and esoteric, you could say, or very, very high. So he takes help of stories. Previously with Rupa Goswami, he also did the same and took help from telling stories, communicating through stories. So the story of Sarvagya, the astrologer, is, I'll just go to that briefly. What do we have time? We only have about 14 minutes. But just to let's see if I can find it. Yeah. This is about, okay, here we go. Once a learned astrologer came to the house of a poor man and seeing his distressed condition, questioned him. The astrologer asked, "Why are you unhappy? Your father was very wealthy, but he did not disclose his wealth to you because he died elsewhere?" And Mahaprabhu says, just as the words of the astrologer Sarvagya gave news of the poor man's treasure, Vedic literatures advise one about Krishna consciousness when one is inquisitive to know why he is in a distressed material condition. By the words of the astrologer, the poor man's connection with the treasure was established. Similarly, Vedic literature advises us that our real connection is with Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although being assured of his father's treasure, the poor man cannot acquire this treasure by such knowledge alone. Therefore, the astrologer had to inform him of the means whereby he could actually find the treasure. The astrologer said, "The treasure is in this place, but if you dig toward the southern side, the wasps and drones will rise, and you will not get your treasure. If you dig on the western side, there is a ghost who will create such a disturbance that your hands will not even touch the treasure. If you dig on the northern side, there's a big black snake that will devour you if you attempt to dig up the treasure. However, if you dig up a small quantity of dirt on the eastern side, your hands will immediately touch the pot of treasure." So this allegory is describing how if we seek the treasure of Krishna consciousness through other processes of karma or jnana or yoga, we will meet with a different result. We'll not get what we're looking for. Only if we take up devotional service, then we get that treasure. Not only do we get it, but even by a little effort, as described by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu here. If you dig up a small quantity of dirt on the eastern side, your hands will immediately touch the pot of treasure. So if we attempt to reach our goal through jnana or karma or yoga, then we will meet all kinds of other misfortunes and not reach the treasure at all. But if we just do a small endeavor in the direction of devotional service, we can easily connect with our birthright treasure. This treasure is not something that we earn, really. It's not something that we can acquire by our work. The beginning of this story says that the treasure has been given, has been left to you by your father, but he didn't tell you everything you needed to know to find it. In a sense, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is describing how Krishna has told us, Sarva Dharmam Pradityaja Mam Ekam Saranam Vraja Manmana Bhavavad Bhakta. He's told us of the treasure of love. But he hasn't fully described to us how to get it. That is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. To complete his instruction from Bhagavad Gita by demonstrating practically and elaborating how do we find that treasure which is offered to us by Krishna. We can't earn it. There's nothing we can do to create it. It's there. It's within us. It's already there. We have to discover it by following the direction, the map, the treasure map that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is now giving. He's giving that treasure map. There are people in this world today who are seeking after that. There's a story about a treasure that was one man in America. He buried some good amount. I don't remember the value of it, but it was hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gold and this and that, somewhere in some mountainous region in the middle of America. And he created a map of clues, how to find it. And I don't remember exactly it, but at least 3 or 4 people have died trying to find this treasure. And I think I read recently that somebody finally did, after 40 years or 50 years. So this urge to find the treasure. But where is that treasure? That treasure is within us. But it's hidden. It's hidden by the piles and piles of dirt that we have poured upon it by our attachment to this material world. And as Mahaprabhu is telling the story of Sarvagya, the astrologer, to give us the right direction, to give us, okay, don't go to the northern side. And I can't remember which one is karma, jnana, and yoga, but one of them is karma yoga, one of them is jnana, one of them is siddha yoga or whatever. And get bitten by wasps or chased by ghosts or bitten by a snake or some other thing and never get it. But just go to the eastern side, the eastern horizon. The horizon of Gauradesh, where the sun and the moon have risen simultaneously as Gauranga Nityananda to illuminate everything. You need light also to find treasure, and they're giving it. So the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Sanatana Goswami are the guide for us all, how to progress on the path of devotional service, how to understand Krishna, how to understand ourselves, Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. All of it is outlined. Just to finish my description. So the teachings continue to Sanatan, the energies of the Lord, the aspects of the Absolute Truth, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, the spiritual and material universes, the process of devotional service, the description of Vaidhi Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti, the various qualities of Krishna, and then finally we find him explaining the Atmarama verse in 61 different ways, and tells another story, the story of Mrgari, the hunter. And lastly, he gives the outline to Sanatan for compiling the Hari Bhakti Vilas. So it's all there. Sri Chaitanya, in teaching to Rupa and Sanatan, gave us all the clues, all the directions, all the roadmaps, and by the grace of His divine grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, we have them now in our language, my language at least, English language, and then now by the grace of other devotees in their various languages, and with explanations, with commentary, so that we can fully understand these teachings. And now it's our responsibility to absorb them, to understand them, and to communicate them as cultures and languages change and evolve in this world. We have to hold fast to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teaching and present it in an appropriate way without any change to the essence, the principles. So let us all continue reading Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. I invite all of you to participate. Now time for a little advertisement. For the GBC Strategic Planning Team, we're broadcasting a series on celebrating Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita with at least one or two broadcasts. Most of them are live interviews or talks by senior devotees, Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis from all over the world. This evening, I have the great pleasure of hosting His Holiness Lokanath Maharaj, and we're going to be exploring Kirtan and the holy names in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So I invite you to participate by visiting our YouTube or Facebook channel or Mayapur TV. As I recall, we are going to start at it's either 7 or 7:30. I think it's 7 p.m. We're going to begin. Just check it out, gbcspt.com. And for all of your viewers out there who are watching on the internet, you can easily punch in gbcspt.com or facebook.com/gbcspt or youtube.com/gbcspt, whatever you like. But please and subscribe to our channel so you know what's coming up. End of advertisement. Hare Krishna. Thank you very, very much. Right on time. Hare Krishna. It's my pleasure to also see Harisori Prabhu here. I think he's going to make up for all my lackings by coming and taking this seat and continuing this Sravana Utsav, this festival of hearing. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada.
Pancharatna Prabhu ki. So thank you very much, Prabhu, for wonderful explanation about the teachings of
Hare
Chaitanya Siksha. So we'll thank to Prabhu by chanting 3 times Hari Bol loudly, please. Hari Bol! Hari Bol!